Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Monday, June 8th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Well, I think we've exhausted our stories about lists. Last week we posted the top 10 heartbreaking moments in Kansas City sports history. This after the top 25 greatest moments. And a week earlier, columnist Sam Mellinger unveiled his list of the top 50 people that shaped today's area sports scene. But before putting a lid on the stories, I wanted to chat with a person who helped with the cause. Randy Covitz, who covered several sports beats at the Star from 1981 until he retired in 2015, was a consulting voice on these endeavors, and I wanted to chat with him about the final products. So here we go, talking greatest and most disappointing moments in Kansas City sports history, what we got right and what we missed, from the person that covered many of them, Randy Covitz. What were your general impressions of both the greatest moments, and I'm assuming you've seen the saddest moments? It hasn't been in the paper yet as we record this, but it will be. I hope, fingers crossed, it'll be in the paper sometime. But you've seen it. I respect your opinion as much as anybody's in town because of your experience, and you worked at the Star since, 1981?
Yes.
Did I have that right? Covered a lot of the events that we've talked about in here. And so how on a percentage basis, how much do we get right?
Well, I thought we got 90% of it right. I covered so many of those events, although since in the 5 years since I retired, the Royals won the World Series and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and nobody in town's covered as many Chiefs games as I have. No, we got them right. We certainly can quibble on some order of things. A guy like George Brett, we could have just done 10 to 15 just on him.
His greatest moments.
So where do you rank? He's most famous for the pine tar, but obviously greatest moment for Kansas City. Which one was it? I personally, and this wasn't on the list, because I guess we only did two of George's, pine tar and
Gossage.
And the 1980 home run, which changed everything. You could argue that the Royals were still up 2-1, but they weren't going to win the next day in Yankee Stadium. And then you got to come home with all the demons. So that home run
and it was off the pitcher that was one of the best in the game.
Yes. So obviously that had a rank up there, as did pine tar. But when I close my eyes and see George Brett in Kansas City, I see two pictures. Him standing at second base, holding his helmet. Behind him, the old scoreboard showing him over 400. And did they win that game? I don't remember. They probably did because they won 75% of the games that year. Right. But just that moment on that Sunday afternoon, and then the final moment, him kissing home plate. Again, did they win that game? And I know that was a lot of the criterion, the impact of a result.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then, again, not a moment, but the performance in Game 3 against Toronto when they were down 2-0, and not the two home runs and the double, but the play he made behind third base to save a run and keep. So like I said, just George Brett, you could make 10 highlights. But I thought we got them. I thought we got them right. You could argue where Gordon's home run compares with George's, and again, 65 toss power trap. I mean, that's iconic. And Otis's catch down the sidelines, certainly was where it was. The Wasp play's interesting because it wasn't a touchdown.
No.
And they were still losing after they scored.
That's right.
It took a lot of San Francisco bumbling and a great tip pass by Jones to get the Chiefs the ball back. But again, we knew the play call. We don't know the hitch pass to Otis. We just see Otis.
Got the cute nickname for it.
Yes, and we just see Otis high stepping down the sideline.
Shaking the tackle and going.
So you could argue 65 power trap, and you could argue the Wasp. And I tell you what, the Mahomes run might have been better than both of them.
Yeah, it was on the list, but it wasn't as high.
Yes. So no, I thought on the plays, except one, Blair, and you and I discussed it, and somewhere it's got to be on there. If we have to eliminate a high school play that was maybe great, the three-pointer, but how many people really were there? Hal McRae.
Oh, the
taking
slide.
out Willie Randolph.
Slide.
Again, I don't know what the situation in the game was or who won the game, and it wasn't a postseason game, but it might be the most famous play in Royals history. You have the McRae rule, and you can't watch a televised game where there's that questionable, was it interference? Did the guy make contact with the bat? It's all because Hal McRae dumped Willie Randolph in the left field. And it also symbolized the way the Royals played the game in the 70s. That's the way McRae, Brett, Wilson, Cowens, Frank White, all of them, even little Patek. That's the way the Royals played the game in the 70s. And I think that needed to be in there.
You know, let's go back to Brett for a minute, because I think you make really good points. Him standing at second base, taking the helmet off, and the other one, kissing home plate in '93 when he finished. Those are two of the great photographs.
Yes.
Right? And when we talk about images and moments, they are snapshots, right? And I think that's a really good point that maybe you look at, what are the iconic photographs? And because certainly one of the reasons number one on our list which was 65 toss power trap was because Hank Stram happened to be mic'd up that day. And it became iconic. Otherwise, it's a great moment. It's a touchdown in a Super Bowl, like the Otis Taylor touchdown in the Super Bowl. But the fact that it became what it became, and heck, the Chiefs production company is named 65 toss power trap. So I think those are good points about George Brett and the photograph. I just can see as you were mentioning those, and neither one of those made our top 25. But as you were mentioning those, the thing that flashed into my mind were the photographs of those moments. And I think that should be part of the qualifications for these. Do you remember the image of that moment? Yeah,
I mean, Damian Williams' touchdowns in the Super Bowl were both better, both better than Garrett, just going off tackle and following Mo Mormon and Fred Urbanus, and the Chiefs totally manhandled Minnesota all day. You and me could have scored on that, but it was Hank sending that play in, and Leonard we hadn't even practiced that play. And you got that right, Gloucester? And that's all mic'd up, and that's what made it so romantic.
Yeah. And but we did include on that top 25, let's stay on the greatest moments. Mm-hmm. There were some college and some high school moments as well. The high school moment, I should say, the Derek Hood three-pointer that sent the Raytown game into overtime. It was the first three-pointer that Derek Hood had made that year in front of 10,000 people at Municipal. It was a heck of a moment. We've talked to Howard Richmond about how big, probably the biggest moment in high school history for Kansas City. But in the college realm, it was tough to come up with after the Chalmers shot, basically, and the Orlando Blackman shot that won Kansas State the second round game in the NCAA tournament. It really was kind of difficult to come up with just those moments, those snapshot moments for the colleges. Did you think of any others that now remember, keeping it on the greatest, and because we've got plenty of disappointments and sadness, but on the greatest moments for KU, K-State, Mizzou especially.
No, I thought of, remember when Missouri beat Kansas on a last-second shot? It might have been Quinn Snyder's last win. Who made that basket?
Well, that was the Tate.
Yes.
Corey Tate.
Was that him?
In 97 when Missouri upset top-ranked Kansas. It was Kansas' only loss until they lost to Arizona in the NCAA tournament that year.
I remember Mike DeArmond going to class the next day with him and all the adulation on. And sadly, I think that was Quinn Snyder's last win. I think.
No. That was Norm. Norm was still the.
Well, they beat him. I remember.
There was also certainly a game where
I can't remember his name either. I'm sorry.
He was driving. I can't remember it either.
This makes for bad radio. but it was Quinn's. I remember Quinn and his assistant Melvin Watkins embracing and you thought that might have been the defining win, and then all of a sudden things went right. But no, I do remember. I remember that one. I'm old enough to remember Theo Franks' shot in 1969 that beat Kansas 47-46 in Old Brewer Fieldhouse. But nobody.
I thought about this. There are a lot of those games that were never televised.
Right.
You don't have images for last-second shots. And there was a game in '62 where KU beat K-State in 4 overtimes in Kansas City, and it was a last-second shot that did it. And there's all we have is a headline basically for that, and no images. But let's go back to baseball for a second, and I want to. Just the Gordon home run versus the Brett home run. You make the point that the Royals, now they were up 2-0 with the Brett home run off of Gossage. They were up 2-0. That series, the way that it was structured, that it wasn't ever going to come back to Kansas City. They would have played 3 in New York if the Yankees had won that game. And I've talked, George Brett on a podcast earlier told us that he thought that one of the reasons the Royals didn't beat the Phillies in the World Series was because once they beat the Yankees, they felt like that they had conquered the mountain, right?
Yeah.
And so I just think I was pushing for the Brett home run to be higher. I think it was 6th on the list, and I was pushing for that to be higher. I don't know if higher than Alex Gordon, but certainly higher. But did you see the story that came out just a couple of weeks ago that the one of the Mets players said that they think they win the World Series if Gordon doesn't hit the home run? So I'll tell you what, for a city market our size to have 2 sort of iconic home runs, not a bad deal.
Well, I see that too, but it was game 1 of a best of 7. Wasn't even game 3 of a best of 5. So yeah, that would have been tough to lose game 1 of the World Series at home. But the Royals have overcome 3-1 deficits before. Right. And so I think
twice in a year.
Yes. So I think that would have been sad had they lost that game if that ball, hey, what happens if Esky doesn't hit the inside the park home run to start the game? So that's the only thing. If Gordon hit that in game 5, later in the series. But they're both great moments, and maybe like Sam Mellinger says, Gordon may have a statue of that home run outside the stadium one day. So you can't argue with that.
All right, well, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the flip side of this. We didn't do as many as 25 moments. We just did 10 because look, they're bad memories, but they are part of the history of Kansas City sports. And we'll be back with Randy Covitz right after this. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. All right, back with Randy Covitz, and we're talking lists, because that's what you do when there are no games to cover. We're doing summer stuff. Sam Mellinger did his top 50 influential people in Kansas City sports, and then Pete and I worked on the top 25 greatest moments list, and Pete helped me, and Sam, everybody, and you helped with the top 10 most disappointment list. These are the types of things you do usually in the dead of summer when football hasn't started, and really all you have is baseball and soccer going on, and you're looking for things to do. Well, we've been kind of looking for things to do for since mid-March. And so we're doing these lists. And thank you for helping on them. So let's shift gears. We talked about the top 25 greatest moments. So I thought, memorable moments. We kind of got into a little discussion of what exactly a memorable moment was. But Pete and I decided, let's keep the top 25 mostly good moments. And then I'll do a list of the other moments that were memorable in the wrong way. And I had as the number one moment the 1995 Chiefs season playoff loss, where Lin Elliott missed 3 field goals, And the last one was the 42-yarder that would have tied the game, wouldn't have won it, but would have tied the game, sent it to overtime. And the reason I chose that one, I didn't cover the game. I just remember being here and feeling not just the sadness, but the anger of Kansas City Chiefs fans after that game. And that continued for a while. People were pissed off about losing that game. And Elliott, of course, that was it for him. I mean, he couldn't come back. But you were there. And like I said, you covered more Chiefs games than anybody. What do you remember about that night, that game? I say it was a night.
Well, the saddest thing about that was it was such an unusually, and even, this is funny to say, out of seasonal temperature in January, but it was. Because the week before, the week after, were your mild 45, 48 degree, sunny, cold games. But this was bone chilling.
The field was frozen, right?
Yes. So it was just just such poor luck. Colts had a play in it too. Blanchard made one field goal. I think he missed one too. But the Chiefs only scored 7 points. I mean, Bono had multiple turnovers. So
didn't even finish the game.
No, Gannon came in. The great headline that we had in our paper the next year when Bono came back as quarterback, but was still playing poorly, and Rich Gannon, that backup in Kansas City, and the great headline was "Get Rich Quick," because everybody in town who wanted Gannon over Gerbach wanted Gannon over Bono. So
that's future NFL MVP Rich Gannon,
yes,
but not with the Chiefs.
Right. So at any rate, the game was just played in just such unbelievable conditions. It was just, again, that was part of the Marty Carl bad luck. That if it just would have been an average January, he makes all three. I mean, he had a phenomenal percentage those 2 years he kicked here, although he was slumping. The last, you go back, look at the last,
I will have to look.
6 weeks of the season, he was slumping a little bit. People were kind of worried if it came down to a kick. So, yeah, the word you, Kat, said and captured it was anger. Why I think 71, the Christmas Day game.
Jan Stenerud also doesn't miss three. He did miss three.
He missed three. One was blocked. What happened was, the first one that Jan missed, Hank got a little greedy, and he called for a fake. They didn't need 6. They needed 3 to maintain a 2-score lead.
Right.
And he called for a fake. Jan was a great athlete, just like Gerald Wilson, the punter, was a great athlete. And they were, rosters were slim then, so these guys did other things. So it was supposed to be a direct snap back to Jan, and Jan was going to take off around one.
By Bobby Bell.
And Bobby didn't get the signal or wasn't sure.
Said he didn't see Jan looking. So,
right.
Which was Jan was supposed to do.
Right.
He was supposed to sell the fake, and he wasn't looking.
Right. So it goes to Dawson, and Dawson was surprised because he was getting ready to get off a knee to go throw a block.
Yeah.
And so it was a hurried kick that had no chance. And the third one, I've heard Bonicani talk, Nick Bonicani, they saw something in the Chiefs' protection that he thought he can get to it. And he got to that. But the other one, 31 yards.
With 35 seconds to go, that would have won the game.
And he makes 999 out of 1,000 times, the greatest kicker in NFL history. So that was one of those games. And when you define these moments of heartbreak more than any even of triumph, I define it by you remember where you were when that happened. And Christmas was ruined for everybody in Kansas City. It wasn't anger. It was just disbelief.
It's sad. A lot of sadness.
Just like we talked about the 77 team of the Royals was maybe their best team. It was better than 80. It was much better than 85. Probably better than 14-15. I mean, and that's why that's our second saddest moment. The same thing with the Chiefs 71 team. People think that was better than
their
the
best.
two Super Bowl
maybe
teams.
their best team. That's
and while after the Lin Elliott game, the Chiefs still went back to the playoffs in 97, 13-3. Another heartbreaker that could have made the list. But the Chiefs didn't recover from the 71 loss for over 20 years until Marty and Carl came in. And even then, they couldn't dodge the bad karma of so that's why I ranked 71 the most disappointing. But you can make an argument for both.
Yeah, the Stenerud miss, and at the time nobody knew that was the Chiefs were in at the doorstep of futility for the next 2 decades. In fact, there was excitement. They were going into the new stadium the next year, and everybody was coming back. But they were aging, and it wasn't recognized that they were an aging team.
Hank Stram's argument about letting that team grow old is, I got Bobby Bell, I got Buck Buchanan, I got Lin. Who am I going to get that's better? He just couldn't imagine somebody else coming in and being better than Willie Lanier. So you fall in love with your guys. There's no free agency back then. Right. I think in these days, you don't let a team get old. Hey, Belichick showed that in New England when he lets guys go early. So I think different era, but yeah, it came down so fast. Another little side note to what happened in the 70s too. Dawson's talked about this. He thinks when they got into the new stadium, they got soft. He said, this locker room, carpeted locker rooms, these wonderful, he says, this is better than a lot of guys' apartments. and so they just kind of got soft in the new stadium. And on top of aging, that's what happened. And
probably bad moves and bad quarterback play, bad coaching. Just, it did fall apart. And you're right, the effect on the franchise. You can go back to that game and say in that moment, Jan Stenerud's miss was, it magnifies the miss. It does because of what happened. Now, there was an additional, but the game went almost 83 minutes.
The other thing, it's the longest game still in NFL history.
Right, and there were other opportunities to win the game. And after Stenerud missed, Yepremian missed a field goal in one of the overtimes that would have won the game for Miami then. But he did hit this 37-yarder to win it to walk off the Chiefs.
Podolak had one of his, might have been the kickoff return to start overtime.
Well,
he had one return that he just about broke it.
Well, he did, and that was the play. And then that was the Dolphins had just tied it. Podolak returns the kickoff 78 yards to set up Stenerud's final attempt in regulation.
Yes, but he came so close to breaking that.
He did.
And that's all he had to do.
Right. And that was the 350-yard total offense game. It's still a record, by the way. So that's probably, I don't know, next to the 2 Super Bowl victories, the most famous Chiefs game, right? The Christmas Day loss.
Yes.
All right, let's shift it to the Royals. You mentioned the 77 team, and I wasn't here, and but I was a big baseball fan then, and I just remember being really awed by that team. They were beating everybody, and it seems like they didn't lose after the All-Star break. I think that was the year they went 25-5 in July or something. They were just mowing people down, just crushing teams, and then they get to the playoffs, and I thought, they'll get the Yankees this year the way the Yankees had the Chris Chambliss walk-off, which is also part of the list, by the way. Sure. So Yankees walk off the Royals the previous year. So the Royals will have that motivation going into this. They had the home field advantage. They had the better record. So, or maybe it would flip back then. I can't remember. But anyway, games 3, 4, and 5 are in Kansas City. They get to game 5, take a 3-2 lead into the 9th. So Dennis Leonard comes out to start the 9th. And I think it goes single walk or walk single, but the first 2 guys get on. And man, if you were a Royals fan and you're watching that, you had to have a big lump in your throat at that point, just thinking, what in the world could happen? And 3 runs. I don't think the Yankees had a hard hit ball in that inning. There was an error. Anyway, 3 runs later, the Royals end up losing that game 5-3. And we talked about famous photos in the in the first segment. There's Freddie Patek in the dugout.
Joe Coleman of the Kansas City Times captured that picture, and that told it all.
So is that the biggest disappointment for the Royals, you think, in their history, losing that game? Yeah,
like I said, Chambliss kind of came out of nowhere, but that was their first.
And the Royals kind of rallied to tie that game, the 3-run home.
Yeah, and there's no question about it. You're right. The 80 World Series, they were playing with house money, and so no, I I don't think there's any question at all. That's their biggest heartbreak.
Well, and then, you and I talked about some of the Missouri heartbreaks. And my gosh, I don't know if there's an athletic program equal to the number of bad bounces, misfortune, bad timing that has inflicted Missouri over the years. Many great moments for the Tigers, but for whatever reason, when they have moments like this, they have nickname moments,
Even to this day, even Barry Odom's coaching periods, a couple of those losses to Kentucky and South Carolina.
How do you possibly
where they misadministered the time between plays and allowed Kentucky one more play to throw an impossible, and maybe there was interference on the play and they didn't call. And I thought of another. Even Frank Hayes with that loss in the first round
to Norfolk State.
To Norfolk State, that just. It continues to this day, the bizarreness of it. But you had the fifth down.
Yeah, we had a conversation about this because we kind of narrowed it down to the flea kicker loss to Nebraska, the Tyus Edney drive, the length of the court drive, and then the fifth down game. And the fifth down game is number 5 on the list, which is the highest of any of the Missouri or college disappointments. But you think that maybe there should be another one as high or higher?
Yeah, I think Tyus Edney, because that was in the NCAA tournament. Turned out they lost to the eventual champion, right?
Right.
UCLA. Now, let me ask you, was that a first or second round game?
It was a second round game. But I always make the point that college sports would be different today when it comes to this name, image, and likeness story, because it all started with Ed O'Bannon. His picture on the cover of the EA Sports game. If UCLA loses that game, Ed O'Bannon doesn't, and UCLA don't win the national championship in '95.
Wow.
So anyway, that was a total heartbreak. And I watched a video of that the other day, and just to allow Tyus Edney that much space to get up the floor so quickly.
What that did to me was, again, we talk about symbolizing eras. Norm Stewart, one of the all-time great college basketball coaches, but he never made it to a Final Four. That's his one but. Yeah. And games like that, they had several tournament games like that, as all schools do. See, that's what makes the NCAA tournament so great, is you have those moments, and it was such a big stage. And the fifth down was so bizarre. It was so inexcusable. But what was Missouri? They are 4-17.
They were, but Vahe Gregorian makes the point that the week before, Missouri had beaten Arizona State, which was a ranked team, and they were bidding for their second straight win over a ranked team. Now, I don't think that in the grand scheme of things, that's not what it was about. It didn't change. I don't know if it changed the course of Missouri's season. It certainly, impacted Colorado. If Colorado loses that game, they don't go on to a share of the national championship. But I think, again, as we were making decisions about what should and shouldn't be on the list, almost like 65 toss power trap, this is a moment in sports history that has just, it's never died. And it's not only indelible to Missouri fans, but I think to college football fans in general. You mentioned fifth down, and they know exactly what you're talking about. I think the same is probably true of Tyus Edney.
I do too.
Tyus Edney, but absolutely with fifth down and.
Tyus Edney, I think, is on the staff at UCLA, or at least he was. And when they've showed UCLA games, and they talk about it. Sometimes the producer will have that clip to show Derek Grimm just standing there watching them go. You don't want to foul.
Arms are up.
You don't want to foul. Right. But you got and again, Norm Stewart. What's he known for?
His defense.
It just the guy shouldn't have. And then the ball kind of rolled around, if I remember.
Right.
I don't think it just dropped right in. I think there was a.
Oh no, there was some torture. There was absolutely some torture to go.
And then the flea kicker again. This was Nebraska now. This wasn't, you didn't know about Colorado. They were good, but this was Nebraska. But again, that was early in Larry Smith's tenure. And I remember I was pinch hitting. I was at a Missouri basketball game covering, because Mike DeArmond was covering the Olympics or something. It was signing day. And Larry had a pretty good class. They're all great classes when you sign it, but he really did. That was kind of what got him to get some bowl games and stuff. And I remember asking him, when it's all said and done, did that Nebraska finish to maybe put you guys on the map a little bit? And he kind of smiled. He didn't say, yeah, but I think that gave Missouri a little bit more of a national presence, even in defeat. But I just, we can argue all night long. I say Tyus Agnew, you say fifth down, that's good.
Either way, it just crushes the spirit of the Missouri fans.
Yes. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Let's talk quickly about there have been so many disappointing losses for Kansas in the NCAA tournament. And disappointing because they're always a great seed. And anytime you lose as a 1 or a 2 seed before the Final Four, it's going to be a disappointing loss. But we chose I hope I pronounce his name right, Ali Farouk-Manesh.
Northern Iowa
guy who hit the shot. Yep. Because we couldn't find like a single moment from the VCU loss or the Rhode Island loss or the UTEP loss. There were all moments that contributed to an upset loss by Kansas. But the Ali Farouk-Manesh shot was the dagger that fell the Jayhawks.
I even go back, again, you can't find that one play, but to me that also symbolized Bucknell and Bradley and some of those first-round losses. And so, yes, that was, again, I remember where I was watching that game. But I tell you what, when I think of Kansas heartbreak, and the thing is, the worst 2 locker rooms to be in are an NFL locker room, and we could talk about this in a minute, after a playoff loss. And NCAA, a favored team, a top seed team.
Losing in the
tournament. Those two, that 97 Kansas team. Yeah. That's why I suggested maybe you added a couple to this list. Because that when you have 4 first-round NBA picks.
And one that's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Paul Pierce, one of the greatest Celtics of all time. We didn't know that then.
No, we knew he was great.
We thought LaFrentz was going to be a better pro than Paul Pierce. But when you've got this group, and again, they lost to an eventual champion, but to me, that typified Roy. And Roy's inability to win the big one. Roy got to some Final Fours.
Right.
But I just thought that 96, and which brings also 97, that 97 Chiefs team. I mean,
oh my gosh,
that might be the toughest locker room I've ever been in. Was the 97 after that Denver, that 14-10. Again, that was one of those games, cold game.
Bitter cold game.
Not like Indianapolis, but Elvis Gerbach was the symbol of futility there, but they got a terrible call on Tony Gonzalez, had a catch in the end zone. Back then, the rule was if you got shoved out of bounds, it still counted as a touchdown. And now you have to have those foot in the bounds. But then, and he got shoved right out after he was not in the end zone when he caught the ball, but that should have been a touchdown. And so I think of all the Kansas, when I think of the Kansas ones, I think of that night in Birmingham, losing that really good Arizona team, Miles Simon and Bibby Richard Jefferson.
Yeah.
It was a really...
It was a great... They went on to win the national championship. They beat 2 other number 1 seeds along the way. It was a great Arizona team.
But I wish you could have fit in that 97 Kansas team.
Yeah, well, we did, and as I said earlier, we wanted to keep these moments a lesser amount than the greatest moments. So, all right. Well, Randy, you've been very kind to talk about this and to contribute to these moments. We really appreciate it. This was fun. Let's talk again soon.
Yes, enjoyed it. Thank you.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Links to stories that we discussed and those list stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands, and it's a good one. $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes Sports Extra on the e-edition. There's more than 20 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Well, here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.